This presentation is a PechaKucka on the book Copyright Clarity by Renee Hobbs. In this presentation, I will discuss common copyright misconceptions and what is and isn't allowed by copyright laws. The first misunderstanding that I would like to cover deals with what publishers try to make the public believe by putting copyright guideline posters in libraries and in other locations. It is often believed that such posters represent the law. That is not correct. Such charts typically just outline negotiated agreements between publishers and educational groups. Another misconception that I would like to discuss is that teachers can't use copyrighted material because it is illegal to do so. This is an incorrect belief. Whether the copyrighted material can be used depends on its purpose. In her book, Hobbs interviews Cindy Scheibe, who states that a literate citizenship cannot be created if the people who control images don't allow them to be used, and it's important that users of media participate in it and don't just receive it. On the basis of this, society, especially the educational community, needs to be actively involved in the dissection, analysis, and advancement of copyrighted material. Another misconception is that copyright laws are focused on protecting the owner's profitability and control of their material. Actually, according to Carrie Russell, the fact that authors and inventors benefit from copywriting is a side effect of encouraging the dissemination of knowledge and not a direct intent. The next misconception that I would like to discuss is that copying copyrighted material is forbidden. Actually, the Fair Use Doctrine under the Copyright Act of 1976 allows copyrighted material to be copied without permission for the purposes of criticism, comment, reporting, and teaching. Furthermore, the Copyright Act of 1976 allows educators to make copies for educational purposes. To reinforce the idea that copying has been an important behavior throughout history, Hobbs notes that it is common for people to use modified recipes that they see in publications, or how Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech made use of the Declaration of Independence and other famous works. So fair use allows users a lot of opportunities to work with copyrighted material, including the right to criticize, comment, report on, and teach with it. But that must be all, right? No. Fair use protects another big use of copyrighted material called transformative use. Transformative use exists to support the kind of copying, borrowing, and sharing that are necessary to the creative process. So how does someone know if their use of copyrighted material is transformative? In her book, Hobbs states that the ultimate test to determine if the use of copyrighted material is transformative is whether or not the new use of the material has a new meaning or interpretation. Additionally, it must be significant enough to create a distinct and separate community around the second work. To reinforce the concept of transformative use, Hobbs uses the battle between Billy Graham Archives and Dorling Kindersley. Billy Graham Archives sued Kindersley for copyright infringement because the archiving company claimed that Kindersley unlawfully used a copyrighted image that the archiving company owned. Kindersley won the suit because the use of the image was transformative in nature. Oftentimes, license fees are charged to use copyrighted material. Users often believe that they must pay the fee. This belief is false. If the use of the content falls under the Fair Use Doctrine, it is not necessary to pay the license fee, despite what the owner of the content says. So you may be thinking that the Fair Use Doctrine seems too good to be true. How can someone use content if it falls under fair use without having to pay for the content? They must need permission. This is also incorrect. If the use of the copyrighted material falls under fair use, then receiving permission is not necessary. However, if it's not fair use, then permission should be sought. So if copying is protected for all of the previously mentioned reasons, then you may be asking yourself if copyrighted material can be copied for any reason. The answer is no. The test that a potential user should apply to determine if copying is okay is whether or not the copies will help them to avoid buying or producing the work themselves. If their answer is yes, then it is unlawful to copy the material. In her book, Hobbs discusses unlawful copying several times. She notes that it is okay for educators to copy material for students. However, it is not okay to copy material for other teachers because doing so will allow them to avoid purchasing the material. Another misconception is that as long as copyrighted material is properly cited, then it can be used. This is incorrect. In order for copyrighted material to be used, it either needs to fall under the fair use guidelines, permission must be granted, or it needs to be in the public domain. The public domain consists of content that is no longer copyrighted, such as Shakespeare's work. With all of the various guidelines to abide by, it may make educators think that they shouldn't even bother with copyrighted material, especially because breaking copyright laws can get them into trouble. Thankfully, this is not true. Educators and other copyright users should not be afraid of using copyrighted material. When a user acts in good faith, the user cannot be sued. At times, media companies have sent educators cease and desist letters to scare them about using their copyrighted material. Such letters are simply a scare tactic. In her book, Hobbs notes that MTV sent University of Massachusetts professor Sut Jolly a letter to prevent him from creating critical commentary about their music videos. Instead of scaring him, the letter motivated him to start a media company about negative content in the media. In conclusion, users shouldn't be afraid of using copyrighted material. Remember, fair use, which covers the right to criticize, comment, report on, teach with, or advance ideas with copyrighted material, gives users a lot of liberties, so take advantage of them. Furthermore, copying is okay as long as it falls under the fair use doctrine, permission is received, or it is a part of the public domain. Also, remember that educators can make copies of copyrighted material to teach with, but they cannot make copies of material for their colleagues. Don't be intimidated by copyright owners and media companies who try to scare potential users. Users are protected when they act in good faith. Thank you for watching my PechaKucka presentation on the book Copyright Clarity by Renee Hobbs. I hope you enjoyed it.